You just know that every single video about WoW's story being abhorrent is going to be a good one.
Why World of Warcraft's writing is so bad?
Yeah, retail
Because
Andes.
the writers suck? That's the simplest answer. It's a correct answer, in my opinion.
Yes.
But even a great writer would have a hard time working within the framework of modern WoW to produce a good story, much less good dialogue, quest text, etc.
No, just nuke Azeroth and start from fresh. Like that's it. Easy. I sold it for you. And I'm not even a writer.
World of Warcraft was never known for having exceptional writing, but the past
what?
versions of the game were quite sharp and effective.
Did he just say that World of Warcraft wasn't known for having exceptional writing? Okay, that's one of these statements, alright? I don't think he understand. Or maybe just not including Warcraft. But even then, like, Wrath of the Lich King writing is crazy good. So I'm not really sure what he's talking about here. Oh, he started in Shadowlands? Oh, God. Okay. Okay, and now I understand.
Producing long-lasting memories of characters, places, and events, while newer expansions have produced a gray blur of forgettable babble from interchangeable blobs of characters. But why? The emphasis on how the game is played, and how the writing functions within that gameplay, has changed over time, which has, in turn, changed how the writing operates in practice. The majority of the writing still takes place in the form of quest text, but players have slowly disengaged from the quest text to the point where now it's irrelevant filler or simply an annoyance. The game has sped up. It has simplified. The world has been...
Well, to be fair, he is right, but Blizzard did condition them to do so. So I do really believe that the old ways of you going to an NPC with a question mark, he gives you like an infinite scroll of text just for you to give him 10 bear asses is like completely outdated. I do agree with that. It's relic of the ages. But at the same time, Blizzard did cultivate an audience that just goes from zone to zone without really considering anything else. So it's also on them. But at the same time, I think that Guild Wars 2 way of doing like meta events and telling a story through the world rather than text is way more beneficial for MMORPGs long term. I do agree with that.
Nerfed. It's been shrunk. Nobody needs to read the quest text to complete a quest, so most don't. The objective is marked clearly on the map. The player just needs to zip over to the highlighted area and do what their quest tracker says. They don't need to read to get directions, or read how to use an item, or see exactly what they need to kill. It's all listed on the right hand of the screen, with quest items conveniently placed for a quick click. Because they don't need to read about the what and how, they also don't read about the why. Writers, take note, because how you sell a story, how you make it compelling to the reader, is in the why, not so much the how. Think of a heist story. It can be terribly complicated as far as plot goes, but if there's no reason for the character to steal the item in question, there won't be any story tension. One last job for an old friend, one last heist to pay off the bad guy, etc. Motivations matter. I found it funny that many players don't realize that the newest expansion, Dragonflight, as of now, is full of homosexual...
Just for clearance, this video was made 3 years ago, so that's why he said, like, Dragonflight is the new expansion, which, my god, poor lad, he had to go through this and made this video. Listen, I leveled out through Dragonflight whenever I tried Midnight. Brother, my days, like, this is unbelievable. All that you do is tend gardens and take selfies with whelps. This is current World of Warcraft. Imagine. I guess in Midnight they did kind of change it, so now you take selfies with models, which is an improvement, I'll admit, but still. It's TikTok Gen Z crap that nobody wants inside of their games. It's just disgusting. Yeah, Blizzard had so many fans that would voice every NPC out there. Wasn't there like literally an add-on that voice acted everything? I think it's just like, they can easily voice act all the quests. And by the way, they should cut like 50% of quests. Most quests are irrelevant nowadays. Like, they don't even make any sense. You're just going through the slop of, okay, going from point A to B to C and just advancing through the motions. And most of the quests are meaningless. If you cut off every single not important quest, the game would still be, like, no, the game wouldn't be the same. It would actually be better. Because you just cut away the filler.
couples and trans dragons.
So it's less
The
to
quests are
voice
so
act.
ignored by the player base that the insertion of obnoxious woke politics into the game doesn't get noticed. If you are wondering why I noticed, it's partly because I was forcing myself to pay attention to the quest text, just trying to get engaged with what is, in
Yeah.
terms of story, an exceptionally
I literally tried to do that in Midnight because everyone told me, oh, the story's so good. Zelatath is like the best villain out there, bro. She's about to get another toe ring. I'm so hyped. And I read the quest, and I think I lasted like 1 hour. It wasn't the troll area. I remember it too in Zulaman. I really try to understand this, but every single troll you engage with is like, oh, the Loa, praise the Loa are kind. And it's like, brother, have you devolved the trolls to basically be fanatics for the Loa, and that's it? Like, don't they have any other emotion whatsoever? I mean, the race that is pretty much, I think, is the most tribal and has the most inside conflict between all the tribes out there. Like, is that who they became? Is that who they are now? Just bunch of crazy fanatics with no goals whatsoever? Just such a slop writing. It's like every Blizzard writer takes one personality trait of a character and it makes them the entire thing. Every character is a monolith. It's like Turalian is this dude crazed by the light. Aerithor, his son, I think that's his name, right? I hope I'm not wrong about that. So, the Blizzard Andes won't crucify me here. It's Aerithor is like this crazy tantrum throwing kiddo out there who's having just insane daddy issues unsolved and unresolved. And, like, who else did you have there? Like, Anduin is constantly crying, Thrall is a massive green baby, Jaina is irrelevant, and Sylvanas doesn't make any sense. So, that's pretty much the entire characters that we have right now. That's the roster of great Azeroth heroes.
bland and uninspired expansion. I also noted these quests because, perhaps more importantly, the writing surrounding them was terrible. The dialogue between the gay couples came off as camp. Unintentional hilarity derived from attempts at seriousness. It's not the couples being gay on their own that's funny. It's that they appear to be written by a 12-year-old imagining what love and romance are like, but having never experienced any human relationships. Note, there is an irony to this, as only one of the relationships is exclusively
He called
between
it
humans
straight.
in-game. I can't help but laugh when societies fighting generations-long race wars have the morals to completely and perfectly accept gay relationships and modern trans identities. The gay Mongol centaurs were particularly silly.
The what? Oh my god, I probably just have skipped this part of the story, and damn, I didn't even know, like, that exists?
There was an exception to this, which was the few time travel quests featuring Chromie, who is now trans. These had a
What?
few clever and informative moments while not beating you over the head.
No way that's true. No, I think it's just, I don't know if he's cooking or not, I don't think that's true, at least I've never heard anything like that. If that is true, bro, I'm gonna lose it.
With Chromie's sexual identity. It's subtle in the form of her dragon name, Crumdormu, a male moniker, which you can ask her about. She has a very annoying voice actor,
What?
but that's not the writer's fault.
Nah, he's
I
just a
suppose
gnome.
that's what you need to break through the haze of WoW. Writing that
Just
is
a gnome
either
thing.
exceptionally good or
They're all annoying.
exceptionally bad. Unfortunately, the new expansion is filled with the latter. But it wasn't always this way, was it? No, at one point the stories in World of Warcraft were engaging tales that connected you to the game and lent depth to the challenges of the in-game PvE and PvP content. If you want one expansion to point to for when it really fell off the rails in terms of story, it's Warlords of Draenor.
Yes.
This was accepted by most.
And it's so funny because Warlords of Draenor, in terms of potential, I think could have been better than Wrath of the Lich King. This is the expansion, by the way, I started playing World of Warcraft in, because this is the first expansion that came out whenever I had my credit card. My parents refused to buy me anything video game related, or, to be honest, just anything. Like, we're extremely poor. It is what it is, right? That's reality. But, like, I digress. Warlords of Draenor, I remember watching the trailer and being like, damn, that's so good. Like Grom and Garrosh, like, they were so manly, they were so savage. I was like, dog, give me that shit. Like, I'm gonna gobble this up. This is good. And I just played the expansion, and the entire thing is just you being in the garrison doing table missions. And we had a selfie patch, which, I guess that goes to show for something. but the entire expansion in terms of theme and in terms of like potential story being good, I think it could have cooked. If Blizzard would have actually picked up the mantle and restarted Draenor and be like, okay, that's the new standard. Garrosh just killed Sylvanas and everything starts anew. I think everyone would have been okay with this.
Most players to be one of the, quote, bad expansions, despite having the bones to be one of the best. The story was a misfire on every level. The large conflict, which involved time travel and alternate history, screamed, "We're out of ideas." A note for the observant, time travel episodes almost always pop up in a series when the writers are short on good stories. Warlords also changed its story direction multiple times during its long, low-content run, ending up in a place that was totally divorced from the conflict exposed in the intro quests and the initial leveling experience, which, though competent, were far from a complete story. The problems began well before Warlords, however. When I say it had the bones to be one of the best, I mean it. It was gorgeous to look at, and each zone was packed with lore-rich areas, including cities like Shatrath or Karabor, all of which ended up being totally ignored. The problem was that the emphasis had changed before 2014, from the world to the story. Or, as I've said in the past, from your story to the story. You have to consider how the player interacts with an MMORPG. It's through exploration, not through narrative per se.
Yes.
If you want to see what I mean, consider starting a new character on a classic server. Humans are a great example, but each race has these elements. When you spawn into the world, the first thing you're greeted with is a quest to kill some wolves. It's simple and easy to understand, but it begins a basic conflict. Northshire Abbey is threatened. You can resolve that conflict by killing things. First wolves, then kobolds, then thieves in the Defias Brotherhood. Through that sequence, you learn about who lives in the Abbey, why you are doing the quests, and what the larger world is like. Millie's grapes have been stolen, but who are these masked Defias fellows? In a tiny area, you get setting, characters.
Bro, I'm sorry, but the way he's playing the game is just... I really need to, like, shut off my screen and I would still be able to look at his gameplay. How can you play with such a bright screen? My god. Also, shoutouts to Marshall McBald. I really like that NPC. But yeah, he's right. The way you interacted with the world did shift from you just being a part of it and being immersed and understanding through world storytelling to everyone just yelling at your face, you need to do X because Y, and then you gain Z. Like, it's so cringe. It's so on the nose, and I think that every single person hates when they do that because it makes them feel dumb as hell. Like, you don't need to assume that every single player is a Boglamite that can figure out stuff on their own. And by the way, even if you make a really cool quest and some people don't get it, it's okay. Because they will one day. You're gonna have lore nerds like me or Nixium that constantly tells you about the story and love explaining the zones to you and all of that stuff. And that's how you build a word narrative and a long-lasting community. That's why I think Dark Souls has the best stories out there. Because it's being told through the items you drop from various NPCs or you find across the world just scattered out there. And people enjoy that. Now, if you go to the average Souls-like player and ask him what Dark Souls story is, they would most likely know half of it, but they wouldn't really know the rest. And that's okay, because they felt it. They felt it. They played through it. They destroyed the bosses, they killed Lord Gwyn, and they understood the most important bits. Now, if they want to be invested and get a little bit deeper, they can ask people. You have YouTube videos, and like, people made whole careers just explaining Dark Souls story, to be honest. So, it's a good thing. You don't need to explain everything. It doesn't supposed to be on the nose. You can just create a great storytelling and quest without absolutely bombarding us with information. It's fine.
And plot, all interacted with in an RPG-like fashion. You also, I should mention, have the opportunity to ignore them completely and walk away to somewhere else, or to just grind. Once you leave the newbie area of the Abbey, things open up. You get a city, Stormwind, full of NPCs that, when the game launched, had dialogue you could explore to get a sense of the setting and characters there. You could pick up some quests in Goldshire, and if they were too hard or annoying, you could skip them and do something else. There were a few quest chains, but nothing you couldn't simply ignore if it didn't interest you, and most importantly, you had to pay attention to what the NPC said to know how to do the quest. In short, The earlier versions of the game had a dynamic where the player joined a complete and persistent world, rather than witnessing a railroaded story with a set plot sequence that had to be followed exactly. In the process of leveling, you could experience a multitude of stories with deep lore roots. The Defias Brotherhood, introduced in Northshire Abbey, becomes an early antagonistic force, and the conflict culminates in several large PvE engagements, especially killing Edwin Van Cleef at the end of the Deadmines, one of the earliest dungeons in the game, which begins another sequence exposing corruption in Stormwind. Getting the complete Defias story took a long time.
He's talking about the
and involved a lot of
Defias
exploration
Brotherhood
and
quest
challenges.
So good.
And there were many other stories like that in the game. All of the big threats were present in some form in Classic: dragons, undead, old gods, ripped from H.P. Lovecraft, bandits, enemy factions, elementals, bugs, and demons. The shift away from this style of story began with WoW's second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King. This was the first time the game's meta-story focus revolved around a single character and conflict, and it was a great character in the form of Arthas from Warcraft 3. That being said, that focus wasn't as persistent in the game itself. When you landed in Northrend, you were greeted with new conflicts auxiliary to the central conflict, yet still interesting in their own right. Most of them had something to do with the Lich King, and while there was significant quest chaining, there were plenty of small stories off the beaten path that were very interesting to interact with. In fact, the best dungeon in the expansion, Ulduar, was unrelated to the Lich King story arc and dealt with another persistent threat introduced in Classic, the Old Gods. Wrath of the Lich King...
Well, to be fair, Yogg-Saron, did corrupt everyone around him, so he did have a hand in all of that, bad things happening to the world thing, but still, I understand what he's saying.
King was a great expansion, but it introduced many of the things that caused the current rot in the game, like auto-queuing dungeons and multiple raid difficulties. Like these changes, the topic of this essay, the story, was not bad in its original form, but the form rather caused the game and the player base to change in a way that harmed it. There are other things from Wrath that harmed the game permanently that had nothing to do with Blizzard's decisions, and came in the form of user mods. One of these was Gear Score, which boiled players down to an item level. The other was Quest Helper, which marked the location of quest objectives on the player's maps.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the ubiquity of both these mods caused Blizzard to incorporate them into the game as features.
Exactly. And that was Blizzard's fault for listening to players, actually. And it sounds kind of weird to say it, because I know most people take the stand of, oh, the player is always right and you should listen to them. And it's like, no. In reality, players are good when it comes to feedback. You should never listen to players when it comes to solutions. Blizzard should, and every other company for that matter, should always listen to their community frustrations and try to implement a solution that is both good long-term and actually solves the problem. Now, that is a very different, very difficult dichotomy to crack, because the line is very, very thin between doing something that the community wants and doing something that it needs, and I do really understand that. But at the same time, I think it's every great company obligation to do so. So whenever Blizzard implemented Gear Score, it's trash. It's really, really bad and unhealthy for the game. Whenever Blizzard allow add-ons, I think that's unhealthy for the game. Add-ons should be always integrated inside of the game. It should never be an external source thing you should download. You should never do anything except just click and play on a video game, and that's it. Literally never. You should never go to Wowhead for information as well. But, I digress here. So, you should have never done all of these things. Also, Dungeon Finder. Dungeon Finder is okay, as long as you don't teleport to the dungeon. The whole help me find an easy group thing is okay. It's good. But the teleportation, which completely nullifies the idea of you walking to the dungeons and interacting with people along the way, is horrendous. Just teleporting into the dungeon completely shattered immersion and destroyed the game from the inside.
WoW, like other competitive games, is about player power, giving the player the option to skip quest text, ride, or fly to a specified area and then dismount to click on an object or kill a monster represented a power boost.
Again, also flying. People like to say that flying ruined the game. I think flying is very important in MMORPGs, but it needs to be done correctly. Because it is cool to fly to a dungeon or a raid like we did in TBC. It's really, really cool. I think people like that. But again, you need to limit it to very specific key areas because otherwise players are just going to skip the entire content like they do nowadays in retail WoW. In Midnight, I remember you like doing dragon riding throughout Silvermoon, the new Silvermoon, the reworked one. The city itself looks amazing, but it's so empty and lifeless because all that you do is fly from point A to point B without even seeing anyone. And if you try to traverse on ground, it's going to take you ages to do so because the city was built with flying in mind. Blizzard built the city intentionally massive so you can just fly over it with your dragon and not needing to walk there. And that's a huge problem because they already saw, like, oh, nobody's really going to walk through these halls, so we might as well just not give a damn and, like, make it massive so they have to experience it. And it's like, what are you doing? That's a band-aid solution. That's not a thing. Just forbid flying in cities. It would have made the game 10 times better, in my opinion. But again, Blizzard are so incompetent and lazy, they would never be able to come up with a great solution to a problem ever again. Dungeon Finder being linked to your battle group was also bad. We never saw the same person try. True. You're absolutely right about that. Flying is a double-edged sword. It is, and that's why it's so difficult to, like, navigate through the flying. And that's why you'd see many classic purists telling you that flying should be banned. And listen, as someone who is an avid classic Andy, like, I love classic more than retail any time of the day, I can tell you that flying can be used inside of the game, but it needs to be implemented correctly. That's the key part.
It meant you could level more quickly, thus increasing your power with greater speed than you otherwise would. It was hard to resist. Like flying, eventually it became non-optional, since it's tied to power level, which is the main point of the game. Reflexively, as quest text gets ignored more, it becomes less important to make it functional. At best, it becomes some obscure exposition about some area in the game. At worst, paragraphs that say nothing. It's not that the developers embraced all of this overnight. Like features in general, the story declined over time until there was only one path: the campaign. The campaign, which is...
They made some new zones ground mount only, and only people bitched about it, of course. Yeah, but you need to understand that the current people who are playing retail are a bunch of Boglamites. Like, they're not advanced species. It's like, it's stupid. Like, you can't even reach them, right? And, like, I'm not trying to insult them here. It just, like, it is what it is. They're like, they play retail WoW because they have been conditioned to think a certain way. But I bet that if you implement that feature of no flying in Classic Plus, everyone would agree with that. Everyone would agree with you. Everyone would have told you, damn, that's such a great decision by Blizzard. Because the community is completely different. But again, you really need to start cultivating an audience again that makes sense. Because right now, the audience you have for retail World of Warcraft are a bunch of whales and Labubu millennials.
Series of quests that make up the main story of the expansion has been a feature since Warlords of Draenor, and now it's an unavoidable part of the experience. Other games, notably Final Fantasy XIV, use this style of story presentation where the player moves through various areas in the order dictated by the campaign, doing side quests as desired, but always following a linear narrative. It works great there. I can honestly say that Final Fantasy XIV has the best MMO story I've seen.
Yeah, but it's a single player. It's not really an MMO. And I played FF14 for 6 months. I've done everything until Endwalker. I watched Endwalker on YouTube. I played until Shadowbringers. And I can tell you, like, while the story is great, minus A Realm Reborn, it's just single player. It's not really fun in terms of MMO. World of Warcraft was always about, like, the world building and you being with other people and experience the story with other people. FF14 does a really bad job at doing that. It's just a single player game disguised as an MMO.
Very solid story for any JRPG. Yet that approach falls flat in World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy XIV has a distinctive storytelling style that is superior to WoW in a number of ways. They use dialogue boxes rather than big walls of quest text.
Yes.
They use lots of cutscenes, voice acted and silent. That slows the player down. It makes him or her pay attention. Since the player can level every class on one character, he doesn't need to repeat any of the story unless he wants to. And Final Fantasy XIV still uses quest tracking on the map. These techniques are not why Final Fantasy XIV blows WoW out of the water in terms of story. WoW has had big, cutscene-focused campaigns, and yet the stories still suck. Here's
Yeah.
where we circle back around to the
It's just
original
poor writing.
point. The WoW writers are bad.
It just writer diff. Like, of course, like, FF story is better, then naturally the entire game would become better because you should care about the story in an MMO that you're playing. It's obvious, right? It's just insane. Yeah, the FF gameplay had me chewing on my desk out of frustration. The only reason I quit FF14 is because they vehemently refused to update the engine. If they allow themselves to update the engine to the point where you cannot play it on PS3 anymore, I would have been playing FF14 right now. I would have come back to play Dawn trailer, like what was the, I forgot the name, like literally the new expansion. Like I would have came to play that, but no, I'm not gonna do that. The engine moves so bad and abilities just feel so clunky. It's unfortunate.
The big
Dawn
difference
Trail,
between
yeah.
Yoshi P and company and Blizzard Entertainment is that the Final Fantasy XIV team knows how to write a story.
What?
They know-
It looks so gray and slow. That's only on his PC. Like, this guy is either playing Omega Bright Flashbang level or super gray and dark. You can't see anything. He doesn't have any gamma distinction whatsoever. The disparity between him playing games is just immaculate. And it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny to see. But no, it's in actuality, the game doesn't look like that.
Setting, characters, and plot. All
He's
three
just
of
doing
these
it kind
things
of
are
dirty.
shaky in WoW post-Lich King. Consider the Scions of the Seventh Dawn in Final Fantasy XIV. A group of NPCs that the player doesn't just encounter a few times, but who go on repeat adventures with the player. The Warrior of Light, their term for the player character, is a silent protagonist, a blank slate. It is the central cast that is the real stars, and you really get to know them over the course of the campaigns. They are the real protagonists, working to solve the central conflict of each story arc. Some friends even die along the way, and their deaths matter to the world, the player, and the other characters.
Spoilers?
Each conflict is clear, and the event sequence leads to a correct and satisfying conclusion, always as a part of some multiplayer encounter. The gameplay reinforces the narrative. WoW shifted into a campaign-style presentation of story arcs, and the writers never really thought about characters. With classic WoW, the world was the star, and how you played made your own story take precedent. But as time went on and the game became equal parts solo grind and lobby game rather than an old-school persistent world MMO, that original feeling of being a nobody exploring a dangerous, epic wilderness was lost forever. NPCs are now items you click on to get a quest, and a quest reward, not an extension of a world that felt like it could be real. Occasionally you do get to meet interesting characters, but these characters get abandoned fairly quickly. A great example is the intro quest from Battle for Azeroth, which on the Alliance side introduces you to two very interesting and likable characters who you see perhaps one or two more times throughout the course of the entire expansion. And so here we are at Dragonflight. The characters are the dragon aspects, who, being
Yeah.
paragons, don't function as companions in an adventure. They are quest givers. They sit in a tower, just like in Wrath of the Lich King, and send the player to fetch things for them. There's no protagonist, since the player character has no real reason to do anything, and the quest givers are passive.
Exactly. In the entirety of Dragonflight was just, we made an expansion for the sake of making an expansion. I leveled up all throughout Dragonflight, none of the story made sense. And it can all be forgotten. Like, if we delete Dragonflight today, would anyone mind? Would it affect the story in any meaningful way whatsoever? I think that even Shadowlands would somewhat affect it, even though it has been retconned like 5 times by now. I think even Shadowlands story had a modicum of influence on the game. What did Dragonflight do? Literally nothing. Except of, like, sissifying the entire dragon aspects from being cool to, like, being weird and lanky and cringe. It didn't do anything. It only deteriorated the game level to an obtuse, just storytelling. So, we can literally nuke the entire expansion, no one would mind. Yeah, still Guild Wars 2 flying. Oh, right, they did do that. Yeah, I forgot about that. You're absolutely right. And the Vistas.
Nobody is doing any pro-tagging. It's just endless.
Wait, what? But I couldn't play as Drakthir? Damn. All the bigots out there are mad right now. They're molding. Yeah, this is what I liked about EverQuest. Not all story BS, just lore and big world. And it's funny you're saying that because World of Warcraft actually learned from EverQuest. Most of the great developers that worked on vanilla are actually EverQuest gamers. Jeff Kaplan is a good example of that.
Renown grinds directed towards nothing in the story. I can't tell you the name of the barely present antagonist, some sort of primal dragon, who shows up in 2 cutscenes and whose motivations amount to, "I'm big mad about you becoming pals with the Titans 20,000 years ago." Apparently you do get to kill this character in the first raid, which leaves you to wonder what the rest of the expansion is going to be about. I'm sure in 2 or 3 years, when the devs get around to putting out the final raid, we'll finally get the answers that we want. The central conflict is hardly coherent. There are no characters engaged in the conflict in a meaningful way. And the plot? There is no plot. You arrive on the island, and then are shuffled through a few zones, doing quests in various hubs, solving the problems of forgettable NPCs. Who's going to be the new Black Dragon aspect? You gotta beat the bad centaurs. The walrus people and gnolls are fighting. Gnolls are bad. Kill them all. Kill some wildlife for me, please. None of this moves you anywhere closer to solving the conflict of the bad dragons, and none of it is interesting on its own. It's all recycled ideas from older versions of the game, so even the setting is boring now. Not even leveling moves you closer, since your real level is now your item level, and the content that could move the conflict forward isn't out, and won't be out. All of this would be more forgivable if the game were like it once was, but the modern design doesn't allow for such things to be sufficient, even if they weren't so poorly done. So that's my conclusion. The writing is the worst it has ever been, even if the gameplay is slightly better.
It's ever been yet. It's so funny because 3 years have passed since he made that video, and the writing didn't really get any better. Like, yeah, they brought Chris Metzen on board, but nothing really makes sense. Like, the War Within writing is trash. Midnight is also garbage. You don't even know what Zelata's motives are, if I'm not mistaken, unless it was revealed, and I guess I missed it. I don't think you even know why she do what she do. Like, she's just kind of like, I'm the new big bad villain of the week, and that's it. Like, nobody really cares. It doesn't matter.
Than it was, and the structure of the world is only slightly better than it was last expansion. It feels like an empty solo grind game with nothing holding its various well-rendered parts together. A game whose core design has rendered any story moot and superfluous to the players. And the players like it that way, I guess. The sad part is that it's all huge wasted potential in a game that has as much history and lore as the Warcraft universe. As a player, I suppose you have to enjoy it for the raids and gear grind.
No, you don't even enjoy it for that, because every single thing you do is being invalidated the next patch in 3 weeks. So even that is not true anymore. But yeah, okay, I mean, he had some pretty great points there. I actually like this video. Thank you for the guy who recommended me it. Just to kind of summarize, yeah, I think Blizzard should probably start by firing all the people who have no idea what they're doing, aka the entire company. Let Chris Metzen have absolute power over everything Blizzard related, and World of Warcraft would instantly become good again. Just make sure that Chris Metzen is writing the story, is hiring the people, is deciding on mechanics, literally that, and you're going to cook hard with World of Warcraft. But that will never happen because Mrs. Holly Longdale is so insistent on ruining this game like she ruined EverQuest.